Hi, Michelle here. Hidden Gems in the History of Music, but specifically the Dulon Parody Project. Now, Chris and I got together last weekend and we recorded some stuff about Maria Theresia Paradis, and somehow the beginning of it didn't get recorded properly. Don't even know how. So I'm just coming on to do the preamble, and then we'll switch to Chris and I talking last week. So Maria Theresia Paradis is actually not a Von, we found out. Von meaning V-O-N, like the nobility. She's just been called that in a lot of literature about her, but it seems that she's Maria Theresia Paradis. And whether it's Paradis or Paradis, we're not sure how to pronounce it exactly. So when we're in Austria in a few weeks, we will find out for sure. So we're going to try and remember not to call her Von Paradis or Paradis. And we want to talk a little bit about her today. I want to talk about her, and then we wanted to talk about her. So we've mostly spoken about Dulon. And Maria Theresia was born in Vienna in 1759, so she's 10 years older than Dulon. And her father worked for the Empress Maria Theresia, and that's who she was named after. The Empress was very into education, and she made sure that Maria Theresia had the best education she could, which is wonderful. She was not a flutist. She was a pianist and a singer. She wrote quite a few things, and so many were lost, as is true of many composers back then. She wrote 5 operas, and the only thing that survives is 1 overture. And she wrote many, many piano pieces, concertos, sonatas. Most are lost. There are a couple that still survive, and a lot of lieder, a lot of songs, and a lot of those have survived, which is great. Now, she was born in Vienna. She died in Vienna. She undertook a very long 3-year tour around Europe, going to Paris, going to London, all over the place. She met a lot of people. She met Valentin Huet. Again, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. The man who, and we'll find out when we're in Paris, the man who started the very first school for the blind ever in Paris. And she was instrumental in helping him with that. She was good friends with Mozart. She knew Haydn, Gluck, Salieri, and lots of other musicians of the time. Mozart wrote a piano concerto for her. Haydn wrote a piano sonata for her, and Salieri wrote an organ piece for her. So we know that for sure. She gave up touring and performing a lot, and most of her composing at some point in the early 1800s. The date escapes me right now. And she started to just teach. Oh, and I say just teach, as if teaching is not very important. It is. But she started to teach, and she opened a school mainly for girls. And I'm assuming, or we're assuming, thinking that, of course, any blind children would be welcome there. And as far as I understand, it was out of her apartments in Vienna. Hopefully we can tell you more about that later on, because we'll be talking a lot about both of these guys, of course, in the next 6 weeks or so. We found out about a movie called Mesmer. So in this movie, it's about the time when Mesmer treated Maria Theresia for her blindness. And we thought, hey, it would be kind of good to watch. It was done in 1994, and Alan Rickman, I mean, you know, Snape from Harry Potter, he was he was Mesmer. That's a guy, Franz Anton Mesmer. And so we thought, okay, it'd be really cool to watch this. So we watched it, and well, it really wasn't about Maria Theresia at all. I mean, she was in it, and she was portrayed not in a way I think she would have been appreciative of. And from anything I've read about her, she was not like that in real life, like she was in the movie. But of course, movies take all sorts of liberties and, you know, whatever. But it was an interesting movie to watch. I'm glad we watched it. I wouldn't watch again. Anyway, so I think I've said everything we talked about beforehand, and we're going to switch now to Chris and I talking.
She also intersected with a prominent figure of the time, which is Franz Anton Mesmer, from where we get the word mesmerism. And he was, let's call him an alternative healer. Yep. In Vienna in around the same time period. And he was very controversial. His motives are very murky. There's lots of examples of him being an opportunist. He was eventually run out of Vienna as a charlatan. And the overlap is that Maria Theresia Paradis spent 6 months in his home, allegedly being cured of her blindness. And the end result of this, very Mesmerian in its murkiness, there was some evidence that maybe she did get some sight back, but then that only happened when she was in his company. Right. And in the end, he accused her of lying because she didn't want to lose her pension from the Empress. And so it all ended terribly. She had to be removed by the authorities from his home. So it's a very murky, dark story, and it's really hard to know the subjective experience of the people involved.
Right.
So as a storyteller, my mind is sort of in a ferment about what was her, was she a victim? Probably. Was she a victim who suffered a lot? Not so clear. It's all very, very unclear.
Although she did suffer before that. So they did a couple of things. The doctor at the time was suffering anyway, right? They put her head in a plaster. I guess she could eat and breathe for like months. And the whole idea was that they wanted it to have sores underneath so the pus would come out of her head and out of her eyes and she'd be able to see again. Okay, that's gross. And then...
But wait, there's more.
And then they put electric shocks, because electricity was kind of new back then. They thought it would cure everything. They put electric shocks into her eye, something like over 1,000. Not at one time, but over several times. And like one time was like 300 shocks to her eye. So having somebody mesmerize you or hypnotize you and whatever, right. It's a lot less painful than that.
So what Mesmer was doing was a lot of what we might look to us, some of it like Reiki, like laying on of hands or right. Holding of hands, moving of energy. Mm-hmm. And he used sound and a lot of what we would call hypnotic techniques. And so compared to the horrors she had experienced before, her 6 months in Mesmer's house might not have been so terrible. But
we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. And he's such a murky, uncertain figure.
Because he had this idea that he had animal magnetism, so it was this liquid you couldn't see that could flow through him to you. Like I kind of get the Reiki feel to it too, but it's like Reiki on steroids with weirdness attached to it, kind of thing. So he actually honestly thought he could cure anything, which...
And it's unclear, right? Like, I believe he probably did some good.
He might have,
partly through the power of suggestion, partly through the movement of energy that he called animal magnetism, just because he had to call it something. But I won't dismiss him as a complete failure or charlatan. But there's accounts where there's a lot of touching involved, and some of it was fairly intimate seeming touching, and so. You can think of that as addressing the chakras, or it could look like some level of abusive, non-consensual. It's all very difficult to interpret.
Especially 200 years later. But when people would get into these like hysterical fits or whatever, that was probably the whole mesmerizing, hypnotic thing. So whether there's also a lot of points where somebody had something that didn't go away. So
of course.
You're right, it's very murky. But it was a big part of her life. I mean, it was...
she was 18, I think, when that happened. And so as a storyteller, I wonder how that shaped her as a person and how it shaped her interpretation of relating to men or her sexuality. So... There's a movie that we don't necessarily recommend. We just watched it and didn't love it, but there is a movie about Mesmer, and it does star Alan Reed, who I must say Al Rickman, who he's very, very good.
He is very good in it.
That's about the best part of the movie, but
it took a lot of liberties, so we're definitely not recommending it, but we had to see it.
If you're curious, if you want to see an Alan Rickman performance. That's a good one.
From 1994, actually, so it's a while ago.
Oh, okay.
So she was a composer as well as a working musician, performing musician, and a teacher later on. So we're just going to listen to, there's a lot of her music is not around today. It was lost. Like she wrote something like 5 operas and there was only 1 overture left. We're going to share that with you in the comments. And we're going to just listen to one of her piano pieces now, one of her fantasias. Here we go. was really nice. It was interesting to listen to. I always have this idea in my head of her playing it to great crowds around Europe. So I'm sure she played as much of her stuff as she could.
Actually, I really like that piece. Because I'm not a classical musician. I kind of enjoy the repetition of it. I enjoy that. I really like it. But we've been reading different research sources about the time and different musicians who were living in Vienna, along with Mozart and von Paradis. I keep calling it von Paradis. It's going to take a while. But there's some lovely overlaps, and there's just little nuggets of fun things like Haydn lived at the top floor of a multiplex, and on the middle floor was
Maria
Martinez, and then below that was if you were wealthy, you got to live on the main floor of these complexes. So she was an archduchess or something like that. And so it's easy to imagine her hosting as a patron, as a wealthy person, hosting these musicians, and maybe they had a jam every 2 weeks. Let's get together at Martina's apartment block or something.
It's very interesting. But that was when just after Haydn left the choir, so he was like 17, 18 during that time. It was before he got hired by the Esterhazy family, if anybody knows much about Haydn. So he was a young man.
Yeah, he was a teacher at that
point. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're really enjoying building up the cultural lives, our knowledge of the cultural life of Vienna.
It is very fun.
Yeah.
And we just found out, because we're going to Vienna, right, in a couple of months. Not even that long, right? Next month. 5 weeks. Right, we'll be doing lots of recording from there. And we just found out that Maria Theresia used a big composing board. Yeah. Developed by her friend and sometimes librettist. I think it's Riedinger. And I was like, okay, what would that be like? In my mind, I had an idea, and I'm like, is it anywhere? So I looked it up to try and find it. Couldn't see it, I couldn't find it on the internet. Okay, well, who knows? Got in touch with this other person who lives there, who is a music historian, and she particularly is looking into women composers. Talked to her, and she said, oh yeah, it exists. It's in this place. We're going to go see it. It's under glass, but they have a replica that you can sit down and work with. That's exciting. Right?
Yeah, so interesting, because people think Braille and Braille music is like, we just landed on it, and that's not really how it happened. There was precursors to it, obviously. Yeah. People were thinking about this before Louis Braille came up with that, and it became the standard, which standards are great, but it's also fun to look behind them and see what was happening before that.
So that'll be fun. So like I said, in our in our comments down there, not comments, but description, I'm putting in a couple of different links to some of her music that you can listen to, but we're also working on some of it, some of the vocal music, so we're not putting any links in there of that. That will be coming later, maybe in our next live stream. So, right?
Very exciting. I asked Michelle, I said, I'm not a classical singer by any means, but is there some way I could sing one of Maria Theresia Paradis' songs? And so Michelle came back with the melody just tapped out on a piano and a translation, and so I'm working with it, and then we're going to go lots of back and forth. In my folk singer voice, I will be hopefully reproducing one of Paradis' songs along with some flute.
Along with some flute. Instead of piano, we won't probably have a piano in the area, so we'll just stick with flute.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Voice. Yeah, so that'll be exciting. And I hope you join us for that. I think that's all we really have to say about it today.
Thank you.
We'll find out more when we're in Vienna. I'm sure we will.
Much more.
And some when we're in Paris too, when we talk to the School for the Blind.
Yes.
So, thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Have a great day, and until next time, bye.